Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Majlis Podcast, where we aim to bring our Afghan community together. I'm your host, Mansoor, and with me, as always, is Noori. Today, we have the honor of hosting two remarkable individuals who have overcome incredible odds to achieve success in their respective fields. First, we have Samir John, whose journey has taken him from the tumultuous landscape of Afghanistan, where he lived through civil war and multiple forms of government, to the United States. Despite facing adversity, Samir has forged a path of resilience and determination, transitioning from a career in jewelry to becoming a senior consultant at the world's largest professional services firm. Joining Samir is Omar John, who shares a similar background of navigating the challenges of civil war and Taliban rule in Afghanistan. Upon moving to the U.S., Omar embarked on a journey of entrepreneurship, turning his vision into reality by building not one, but two successful businesses. Together, their stories serve as a testament to the power of perseverance, innovation, and the human spirit. Join us as we explore their experiences living in Afghanistan under different governments, their role in working for the government in Afghanistan, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
I kind of want to start off this conversation with an icebreaker, so I'm just going to shoot. If you guys could live anywhere in the world for just 1 year, where would it be?
Afghanistan.
Why?
Because when you look back to where we came from and the memories that we have, the childhood that we spent, you can never have that. It's that nostalgia that always hits you. You hear a song every now and then that hits you. You don't know why you're crying, but you're crying. Okay, you can be in any other country as long as you want, but your homeland is always your homeland.
Beautiful. Beautifully put. Omar John?
I would answer the same, actually. Yeah. I love Kabul, John, and I'm born in Kabul. Not 1 year. I'd like to spend the rest of my life there.
Wow. It really is home.
It is.
Very true. It is, especially if you have traveled. I have been to almost 85 to 90% of the country. And I have traveled by road and later on, of course, by air. But I have seen it all. I have seen the entire country. So there's so many places that I can call home, or I could easily live, or I could easily look myself retiring.
Mm-hmm.
But then you just look at that, and then you're like, that's a dream that we hope that's gonna come true.
What's the most beautiful place you've been to in Afghanistan?
Well, the most beautiful place, I wouldn't be able to name one. There's a few places. You go to Banda Amir, you look at Banda Amir, and then you will be mesmerized by the beauty of it. I have traveled a lot to Ghorban. That's where my father is from. It's in Parwan province, and that valley itself, it's very mesmerizing. There's you could literally say that small valley has different climates in itself. And then, of course, the water fountains, and then you have every single thing you're looking for. The fruits, the food, everything is there. But I actually grew up in northern Afghanistan, in the city of Mazar-e Sharif. So when you go to northern Afghanistan, then their food is, it's just like, you can't compare it to anywhere else in the world. So
That's
basically,
true.
yeah. And then when it comes to places of beauty, of course, you go towards the city of Shibirgan. There's a lot of places that are very beautiful there. You make it to Maimana, to Faryab province. There's a lot of, you would see a lot of sand, of course, but it's beautiful.
What kind of beauty attracts you in a city or a province? Is it the landscape? Is it the architecture? Is it the climate? Is it the history?
In Afghanistan, there's, for me personally, it will be two things. It will be history, and also it will be the landscape, or I would say how do you put this?
Like the natural beauty.
The natural beauty of that place.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at it. Of course, if you travel from Kabul and you're trying to make it to Mazar-e Sharif, you're gonna pass through. You're gonna get to Charikar, and then you're gonna get to, of course, the Salang Pass, and then from there you'll get to Polo Khumri, and you're at Samangan, and then of course you get to Mazar Sharif. On the way, you witness history. You actually witness history. If you have learned about Afghanistan, if you have read about Afghanistan, lived there, you would know step by step of every city has a tale to tell you, and every city has its own architecture, and has its own culture. People are like, oh, we are Afghans, we are all the same culture. That's not true. We have a lot of cultures within that big name of Afghan. We have a lot of identities and a lot of cultures. So going through that path, you will see a lot. So for me, I think it's the landscape and history.
Wow.
I love history too, man. I've never been to Afghanistan, but if I go, and when I go, inshallah, because I do want to go, I think one of the main things I would go for and to travel the country is for the food, because I know, like you said, Afghanistan is very diverse. So every area has its own specialties. Like you said, the north has like Qabli Palau and a lot of good stuff. That, and then the history. Like I know there's, old castles and old stupas, Buddhist stupas, the Buddhas of Bamyan. Herat has a lot, the Alexander's Palace. And I think there's like 4 minarets, really beautiful minarets. But speaking of food, I had some quick questions for you guys. So I know you're both foodies. So for breakfast, if you could decide for tomorrow, let's say, would you rather have some qaimaq or would you have tukhma banjarmi?
I'll go with qaimaq and black tea.
Okay.
Yes, that's my favorite.
Why?
As you know, all Afghans. Just want to add a couple of things, like Samir Jawan mentioning 1948, if I'm not wrong about that year. Kabul and a couple of other major cities were one of the best places in South Asia to do a honeymoon or go for honeymoon.
Oh, wow.
So today we can't compare that time to this, but it's beautiful. But
you might have fun, but maybe not your wife.
But back to the breakfast, I think my favorite is everyone's favorite. Afghans love the fresh bread.
Yeah.
And especially the qaimaq, especially that the homemade or qaimaq watani, that's so delicious.
Yeah.
With the black tea, and especially in the winter time, you go up to the roof, shovel the snow, clean up everything, tired, and just have this little food. That's amazing.
What about you, Samir Jan?
I'll go with Tukhma Banjarmi.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's surprising for me.
Yeah, Tukhma Banjarmi it is. Well, I might not have been a Tukhma Banjarmi person before, maybe. I might have transitioned into it in the past 15 years since I've been married.
Oh, yeah.
And I wasn't more of a spice person either. When I used to work in Islamabad, I was the only person in the entire office that would not eat spicy. So every time they would have a gathering or they would have a party, especially in a local restaurant, they would have trouble feeding me because there was no food that was not spicy. Everything was spicy. So, but then I have transitioned from that now. So I'm more like, I eat a lot of spices. So I would say in the morning, if I have qaimaq and I have tukhma banjarmi, I think it's going to be tukhma banjarmi with fresh green chilies.
I was about to say that because he's from north, and northern Afghan, everybody loves food, and beside that, they're eating so spicy. Anything from charikar. You must have heard about that Shurwai Madar Yunus. So it's one of the famous.
Yeah, you got Shurwai Madar Yunus, you got Shule Gorbandi.
Exactly.
It's all spicy food. But I would be the only person in the entire family that would not eat spicy. The only person. So my mom, my dad, everybody would eat spicy. Everybody was eating spicy, but I was like, oh no, I was the only. They used to tell you the way that they say it in Urdu, right? The only Angres in the family. So I'll be the only Angres in the family not eating spicy. But I have transitioned now, so I'm happy. Oh, this is, my wife is gonna love this one. It's mantu for me, because my wife, she's very big with ashak. Okay, she could have ashak 3 times a day. And then she would keep the leftover from day 1, and she can have it after 3 more days. And breakfast. So that's how much she loves ashak. So I'm not an ashak person because I just don't see the value in it. Okay, but I'm always, I would always be
she might eat.
Is there not enough protein in it for you?
For Samir Jan.
Yeah, so I'll go with mantu.
I would agree with you there. Definitely Mansoor.
Same.
I mean, I love both of them. So I would go with Mansoor more, but women's prefer more Oshak than
Oh, they do?
Mansoor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
His wife's the prime example.
I have a few Afghan grocery stores in my phone, and I only call them to ask them if they have gandana or we leek, right?
Leek.
I call them just because of that, because sometimes one has it, the other don't have it, but every now and then, if she want it, you gotta get it.
And change it. It changed him from the kaimak to tokhum banjar. So
She's changed you. She's changed you, bro.
Happy wife, happy
Happy
life. All right. I want to transition us into a different topic now. I want to bring up life in Afghanistan under different governments. So I know both of you guys have experiences under different governments and regimes. So I wanted to ask you guys, can you share some insights into what life was like for you and your family during those periods? And I want to know, because for me, I grew up here in America. I was born here. My family grew up in Afghanistan, but I don't have that perspective of what it was like to live under a different government and then go through another government and then come to America and then have a completely different system and government. But just on Afghanistan, can you guys speak to those points? I'll let you go first, Omar.
And sorry, one note to add to that. When he was saying, asking his question, I thought about this. I was like, the biggest change we see is Democrat, Republican, and guess what? I don't feel the difference at all. You know, to me, it's like it's all the same. It's the same system. But you guys have been through big changes. You know, every time there's big style. So I'll let you go ahead.
Born in mid-80s, so pretty much first 10, 15 years you don't know much in Afghanistan because you're not involved so much in politics. So and the media wasn't as popular as it's today. For me, the highlight was during the Taliban time. At the beginning of before Taliban, the first few years, everything was good. You were allowed to do a lot of stuff. I'm a huge fan of soccer, and I used to play soccer. My father used to take me to the they call it Ghazi Stadium, so there's like one big football or soccer field. We were watching games, but when the Taliban came in, it was suddenly everything changed on that time, from schools and how people were interacting each other, about how they're, especially how you look at them. Like the women start wearing burqas, and the man has to have a long beards, and they have to check it also. Sometimes they're bringing those very soft clothes, and they just put it on and say, okay, if it's crossed that, it means you cut it, then you're in trouble.
Was it an overnight change? Like, just like the next day,
honestly,
everything changed?
It wasn't overnight, but it took them about 15 to 20 to, maybe Samir John will agree to that. But within a month, there was a first group of Taliban that came in. There was very liberal, very good people. Like they had nothing to do with you. They were just focused on what they've been asked to do. But later on, a certain different group came in and they changed the whole city.
Oh, wow.
And also some other people were trying to take the advantage of the city. And some people wanted to get involved on it, like those Wolgars around the city. They just, like, all you have to do is just put a black turban or just a hat and put what they call it, surma.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Then you're a Talib. And just put your, like a little up your pants or like or turban, whatever you guys call it.
Uh-huh.
And that's it. You're a Talib.
So people would dress like them and take advantage of that situation.
Absolutely. And their execution, I think as a child, it really haunted me. And I can remember. It was so horrifying that I remember my mom would start crying and just close my eyes. I said, just don't look at them. What happened? Somebody stole something. And they put a donkey with their cart. And they just, on his neck, he put 2 gallons of, there was a ghee oil. There was a metal can on it, and they just put a rope around it, and just like an Indian doll, like dang, 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 and it was keep saying in Farsi that har kasi ke duzi bokona, rozesh azi batar, whoever do steal things, will be worse than me. And dang, dang, and it was going around that. I used to live in Makrian, so it's like a kind of a little high society versus certain other places. And people were saying, and that poor guy was crying, and they put money on his nose and his ears, and dang, dang, and it's going around the city. I mean, this is a one, but I will let Samir John share his side of the story also. But going through and going back towards the Karzai, when the new government came in, it was like day and night difference. People were going out. I remember the first picture I saw on the TV, so it was like BBC. Then an Afghan, one of our family friends, he went the first guy to the barber shop. He shaved and he put his picture. And I said, I did it. So, yes. But later on, things change a little bit. But still, some people would prefer to have the Taliban, how they ruled the government at that time versus the time where the new the government came in.
Mm-hmm.
Because the power, corruption took over everything.
Mm-hmm.
Then we say, you know what? I think those guys were better than us. Because you go for a pray, leave your shop open, nobody ever would have touched anything. But now you turn it around, everything is gone. People will kill you. People will rob you for a few $100s.
So would you say the people were always the same, but they just feared the government and their rules differently?
People were the same, yes. But what happened during this transition, when Taliban came in, they call it the Qabiliyah Asil, like the original, original people. They left already. The only people who left there was visitors from other provinces. And they came into Kabul and they started working there. So what happened, those people started learning, but the fear was a big factor. Amr bil Maruf and Nahy anil Munkar, that's the Department of Directorate. They were managing all things, especially like making sure everybody prays, follow the rules of Islam. And they were doing everything, making sure that people go on time for 5-time prayers. When there's a call, you gotta go. You can't do anything. Leave everything behind. And if somebody's trying to do something messy, he's done too. The women's, I remember my grandma, and they had this, one of those guys had this big black belt long, and hit her, this woman. She's still alive. Maybe she wasn't able to walk properly. And she used to wear glasses. And she can't see it with the glasses. Now you put her on a burqa and walk her, she falls down a couple of times. He said, why did you put your face, your face is open? They lashed her on the street. And, those things were bad. But the schools weren't the same. That's why I don't want to take very long,
Mm-hmm.
but we can discuss more about it.
Did you have the same experiences as Omar John?
Well, my experiences are going to be different. Growing up, so mid-80s, right? You start, let's say, 7, 8. I was in Kabul till 2nd grade. So I was about, I would say, 8 years old because I went to school when I was 6. And then I was 8 years old when when the Mujahideen came in. Prior to Mujahideen, I have very little memory of the time of Dr. Najibullah because my father used to work for the government. And then I remember we were able to afford anything that we wanted with the little salary that he would get. My mom used to work also. So she used to work for the government. And then you would have, I remember the times that you would get, they have a coupon system in Afghanistan. So you would get a coupon. And with coupon, you would go and then stand online, and of course, you would get your ration. And they had cooperative stores. When in Farsi, they call them cooperative.
So, Russian name.
The cooperative stores were for government employees that you would buy stuff for heavy discounts, like let's say 30, 50% off. So I remember those as a child. We used to go there, we used to buy stuff, and then life was amazing, except for the rockets that used to come into Kabul at those times by the Mujahideen. Those were all blind rockets.
Sorry, can you expand on who was the government at this time and who was the opposition?
It was the government of Dr. Najibullah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so was this communist?
Well, you could call it that, and you cannot call it that, because the communists is more preferred. They would call the communist government up until Babra Karmal was in power. That was more of the communist government.
Okay.
But when Dr. Najibullah came in, he wanted to find a silver lining in between the two, and then he invited all the parties, Afghan parties, actually to come and have a form a government that's not communist and that's not too Islamic at the same time. So he wanted to find that balance in between, which of course people failed to see, and they did not believe him because of the past experiences that they had with the communists. And they said, no, the Russians have to go. We have to have our own government. And then the Russian left, and then we saw what happened when Mujahideen came in. So from the Mujahideen time, we were the very first, we were a few families that actually fled north when Mujahideen came to power in Kabul, because my father used to work for the government at that time. We had to flee because they were after him, and they were after this is what happens when governments change. People go after people without thinking that, okay, well, that was, you had a job that you were doing you were the breadwinner for your family, but now I came in, so I'll give you a position, let's work together and build this country. No, they were like after people to kill people, to make sure that some things do not surface. A lot of things happened when Mujahideen took over. Of course, the armed arsenal of Afghanistan fled the country. A lot of planes disappeared. A lot of armed depots, especially in Kabul, disappeared overnight. So they were all sold out to the neighboring countries. And at that time, there were very few people that knew about this, and they wanted to make sure to silence those people.
Who sold these?
Well, it was the people that came in with the Mujahideen. There were a few factors, a few individuals that worked actually under them, but it might not have been high level. But overnight, they actually emptied these weapons depots and actually sold them to neighboring countries, and then they made sure to silence everybody that knew about this weapons existed. Because when they took over, when Mujahideen came to Kabul, not a single bullet was shot. So it was a very easy transition. It was not a fighting transition. It was an easy transition. So everything was paper. Everything was actually documented. So people came in and said, hey, here's a depot I got. This is how many Kalashnikovs or AK-47s we have. This is how many of this we have, rockets and everything. I'm just handing it over. Please sign the receipt so that you receive them, right? They signed that paper. But that person, along with that paper, the person who actually handed it over, along with the paper, both would disappear overnight. So they were after my dad, and they were after two of his friends. And he was, from the beginning, he was not a big fan of going to Pakistan or Iran. He just didn't want to. So he wanted to go to northern Afghanistan. And one day, I remember this very vividly. I was playing outside. He came in from work. At that time, he had a bicycle. There was a brand called Golden Lion, so a Golden Lion bicycle. So and I loved it because sometimes I would behave well so that he would let me use his bicycle and then go around.
Also?
What's that?
Ambar was another one.
Ambar was one, yeah. But then at that time they had this new brand called Golden Lion, and they were like promoting this over and over. So we actually he came in from work, and then he went home. My mom called me in, and then he was gathering all the stuff. I'm like, what's going on? He said, well, I'm going somewhere, but make sure anybody comes in and asks you where I am, just don't tell them. I said, okay, so we'll do that. So I'll leave it to my mom. He left for northern Afghanistan. Two of his friends decided that they wanted to go to Pakistan. They were both caught in Maipar Pass, and they were both executed. He actually got lucky because he went north.
Oh, wow.
They were thinking that he's gonna go towards Pakistan, but he didn't.
This was for retribution. The Mujahideen did this for retribution.
They would do that because they would want to
government.
silence people that knew about the transaction, that knew about things existed and disappeared overnight. So they had to make sure that they would silence all the voices, and there would be no traces of them actually making this happen, that transaction happening. That was the whole purpose of it. But then, so he went to north there. After about 2 months, we joined them. It was me and my sister and my mom at that time. So we went to northern Afghanistan, to the city of Mazar Sharif. Back then, northern Afghanistan was ruled under General Dostum. So it was a different government.
He's a very polarizing figure.
Well, it was a more modern government. So what you had in Kabul, you didn't have in Mazar Sharif. In Mazar Sharif, for example, woman would work, they would go to school, everything was perfectly fine. But then you would come to Kabul. Kabul was no less than being under the Taliban. At that time, Kabul was a chaos. They had a president for 1 week, and then they changed the president after 1 week. Yeah. We remember that time, and which country changes the president over in 1 week, So
very special.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So they had all the chaos going on in Kabul, and then they had civil war in Kabul. Mm-hmm. There was a very bad civil war in Kabul at that time among themselves. So we were in northern Afghanistan at that time, and life under General Dostum at that time, everything was amazing. I might get a lot of hate for this, but I have lived there. I have been there. Right, I grew up there, so everything from rule of law, from women's access to education, women's access to jobs, TV, women's access to TV, anchors, everything was there. There's video clips of it. You could watch it today.
Do you remember the money also they had? Like there was two different currency, like a Dostumi money and also the
actual money. So the money they had in Mazar Sharif was worth half of the money that they had in Kabul. And the only way you could differentiate between the two money was the color. Color was lighter. And then in the back of the note, it would say the Afghanistan Bank. The is DA, not THE. The. So the DA would be attached to the capital A of Afghanistan. That's how you would know this is a money from Kabul. But if you would have a space in between the DA and the A of the Afghanistan, that's the money that was printed in northern Afghanistan. But that was the money that was valid.
And it was accepted.
It was accepted, yes. Half
Only
the price. Half the price, but it was accepted. So people used to transact with that money. And going from that, things started getting a little bit tough because all the Mujahideen fled to north. They actually came and they built the Northern Alliance at that time. So the Northern Alliance came into existence. And you talk about the government changes. So this is where we're going to get to the government changes. The first group of the Taliban were brought into northern Afghanistan by a commander called Malik. So General Malik signed a treaty agreement with the Taliban and said, hey, let's get together. No problem. I'll let you come in, and this is your city too. And they said, okay. The moment the Taliban came in, I don't know, the numbers could be high. I have heard 10, 15,000, close to that number. He double-crossed them. That's when the death of the Dasht-e-Laili happened. The very infamous Dasht-e-Laili massacre happened, that they actually captured a lot of these Taliban, put them in containers and closed the containers, and a lot of these people died, suffocated inside those containers.
Doesn't Dostum get accused of this a lot? Are you saying
he gets
it wasn't
accused
him?
of that? General Malik gets accused of that.
Okay.
But then mainly the person who actually brought him in and said and made this happen and started the treaty agreement was him. So this is what happened. So the Taliban fled. The government was there for a few months, and then the enraged Taliban 2.0 came over to the city and took over the entire city. And when they took over the entire city, they blocked off the entire city of Mazar Sharif and all the surrounding cities for 2 weeks. Not a single soul could go to the city. You stay in your home, you only come out of your home and you go to the local mosque or the local masjid. That's all you were allowed to do, because they were cleaning the city. So after 2 weeks, when we went to the city, you would be able to see dead bodies everywhere, in ditches, under the trees, on the roads. And these bodies, mind you, have been there for 2 weeks in the scorching sun of the northern Afghanistan. So you literally would be able to see the human oil come out of their faces and skins, and they're lying all throughout the city. So they were they were only looking. You ask a question: did the people change when the governments would change? right?
And this is your first-hand account, right?
This is the first account.
Yeah,
first
you
time
were
account.
there for all
You
this.
talk-
You saw
You
it.
talk to anybody who lived in Mazar Sharif, they would tell you. They would tell you exactly how this happened. They would go door by door, and they would ask that I'm looking for a Hazara.
They were very aggressive because
Towards the
north
Hazaras.
They believe. If there's it's not a majority of the Northerns speaks Dari or like Tajik. They call it Tajik. So they were more aggressive towards them. Even we had a lot of Pashtuns towards that. I don't want to mix this together, but for the Taliban, that matter. Especially they're going for Hazara, and nobody was thinking like Bamyan had a lot of Hazara, but when it goes to Mazar Sharif, it's a majority.
The
of them
reason they were
there.
going after Hazaras is because they thought the first double cross happened because of the middling of the Hazaras. Hazaras actually made this happen because they cut their supply line from Hairatan Pass or the Durai Hairatan. They say that's where the supply line was cut, and that's how the Taliban actually were not able to flee. So they thought it was all the Hazaras who did it. So they would go door by door and they would look for the Hazaras. This is what we saw. People would come in and they would. I remember me and my dad, we were standing by our house. An old person, I would say 80s, mid 70s, 80s, came in. He had an AK-47 on his shoulder and he asked for water. And my dad said, just go home and bring him some water. And he asked him in Pashto. My dad asked him in Pashto that, Kakatisake, what are you doing here? And the guy was like, give me a second. He looked in his pockets and took out 2 pictures of 2 young boys, hardly 17, 16. Said, these are the 2 boys that I sent with the first regime of the Taliban for the holy war, for them to actually succeed. But they were massacred in cold blood in northern Afghanistan. And I was told that the Hazaras did it. I went and asked the doctor that if I drink the blood of a human being, is it good for me? The doctor told me you cannot because it might clog your arteries or something. That's him saying. I don't know if this is medically true or not. This is him talking. So he's like, I'm only here to make sure that I see a Hazara or I kill a Hazara if I can. This is why that 75-year-old person was there, because of revenge.
I think it puts it into a lot of perspective. Nothing is justified. Nothing cruel is justified, of course, but no. You realize that during this Civil War time, people got emotional, like an animalistic type of behavior came out in people.
That's what actually answers that question of yours, whether people changed. This is how people actually change from regime to regime, right? You would have, to Omar John's point, you would have people that were like your neighbors. I have a funny story for you. During the Taliban, the first time the Taliban came over, right? Well, they took over the entire Mazar Sharif and everything was under the Taliban. It was mandatory for you or anybody aged who prays namaz would have to pray in the congregation. They would have to pray in the masjid. And masjid had a roster. They had your wedding information. They had a roster. You would go there, Fajr prayer. They would tick mark Fajr. They saw you, and then you would go there for Dhuhr prayer, all that. So, Fajr prayer, we go there. We had a neighbor in that area that we lived. This guy was just a normal guy, living his daily life. So, during the sessions of the masjid, the Maulwi or the Imam would sometimes start and asking people questions about religious matters. Do you know how to do wudu? Or do you know how to do ghusl, for example? Or what do you do if you don't have water? So questions of that nature. So one day, he just pointed out to this guy and said, hey, why don't you answer this question? This guy stands up. Okay, all of a sudden we notice he has a big turban. He has surmas on, and surma is lead. So they put lead in their eyes because it makes the vision better. Medical science, of course, has a lot to say about that. But this is him. He stood up and he's like, this is the exact words. Okay, Salaam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Zema moram paktundi, zema palaram paktunda, zema nikim paktunda. خو زه خپل نیت په پښتو کوم. My father is a Pashtun. My grandfather is a Pashtun. I'm a Pashtun. And I will make my namaz intention, the niyyah, in Pashto. He didn't have to do that. He's a normal guy from the local area. Why did he have to go and then announce himself like he's coming out of the closet? The reason he was doing that is because he wanted to make sure to let people know, hey, these guys are my guys. I speak the same language as them. You might have not noticed so far because we were so neighbors here, lived here long years, but now it's my time to shine. So this is my time. This is when I'm going to show you who I really am, and then I would acquaint to these people. So this is how people would change from government to government.
I mean, I think there's opportunistic people, everywhere. When they see their chance,
Absolutely.
they take it.
And transitioning from that government to, of course, the U.S.-backed Karzai government. I remember the time that the Taliban started fleeing northern Afghanistan, because everything started from northern Afghanistan. If you watched all these movies, the 12 hours, 12 strong men.
12 strong men.
12 strong men. So the 12 strong, I think it's 12 strong. So the movie 12 Strong, for example, talks about how the CIA backed the Northern Alliance, and then from the paths of Marmol, Mazar Sharif, they made it all the way to the city of Mazar Sharif and all that. That actually, to some extent, is true. Of course, it's Hollywood. They would kind of spice it up a little bit. But I remember, because we lived at about, I would say, 2 miles. About 2 miles away from the Mazar Sharif airport. The very first thing happened was that the B-1 bombers and also the B-52 bombers, and then you have the stealth bombers, all that, they came in and bombed the airport because they wanted to make sure that they dismantled the airport. So that happened, and after, I would say, a week of that, after a week of the bombing, everything started disappearing. Taliban fled, and then the government came over. My father in the entire area was the very first person to shave. Because we have been used to government changes so much that we were not sure if this is happening or not. Okay? Back then, before the Taliban came into power in northern Afghanistan was in chaos. Somebody would shoot a single bullet in the city, in one corner of the city, and the entire city would shut down. The entire city would shut down. The entire city would just close their shops and they would flee. Nobody knows why, because that was how much chaos was there. So we have been through a lot of government changes. So I was like, Dad, you are actually shaving, but how sure are you? He's like, well, if I'm not sure if this is not going to happen, they can come back and kill me for it. I don't care.
So are you saying that at that time in northern Afghanistan, there was a lot of chaos and there was a lot of uncertainty? Like you said, if someone shot, everything would get shut down. But the Taliban, at least, they brought that certainty.
Well, there are
and
things...
they were like a stabilizing factor.
If we get into the subject of positive and negative, or the pros and cons, right, there's a lot to talk about, right? The only thing is that when you talk about the Taliban, especially the first regime of the Taliban, right? I'm not talking about the now regime of the Taliban because I'm not there. So I wouldn't be able to actually tell you what's exactly going on. We only get the secondhand, or we see what in the news, or we talk to people, that's all. I'm talking about what we saw there, right? The first time of the Taliban, the only problem they had is that they were not able to differentiate between religion and the rule they were trying to bring on people called religion. Because a lot of things that they were bringing on people, like burqa, for example, you can't justify burqa through religion. You just can't. There are certain types of veil in Islam, but the burqa we use in Afghanistan is nowhere in any book, right? Or beating of women, or depriving women from education, for example. These were the things, but safety and security was there, right? That was the only plus point you can give it to them. But of course, now you look at the cons, and then another one you would have is unemployment. Unemployment was at its peak. People literally had nothing to eat during the Taliban regime because there was no jobs. People could not earn. There were no offices for them to work. Education was just a lot of emphasis on Islamic education. There was a lot of emphasis on Islamic education, but people did not know why they have to actually study what they're studying right now. So there was not a lot of aspects of people understanding why they have to get educated to the extent they want them to get educated. So that comprehension, that understanding was not there, but they would just push people to the limit and say, hey, you have to study this. So that's where I would say those were the cons. But the only thing that I can, to Omar Jan's point, safety was there.
I think there's a beautiful hadith also mentions that when the poverty gets from the door, the iman or the faith flee from the window. So it means that when they come in, they bring fear into the people's heart. And no matter what happens, whatever they say, whatever they do, will obey. Yep. So most of the people love that because stability was perfect. Security was good. Nobody cared about like what time. Right now, I mean, I hear people like, my brother's been traveling around Afghanistan during like the Karzai time or Ashraf Ghani time. Nobody were able to travel, but now they are. So it's all about the fear. The fear factor was higher. Exactly, and I wish they understand it to differentiate between things like, how you run the government, how you let the people to do. But in one word, it was a very dark time for all Afghans, especially who've been through. We have seen so many bad things, and but I'm just waiting for the history to be written again. I just want to read that because we would have been a part of that one.
Yeah,
I read a couple of books, and they are saying that we've both been involved helping our government and making sure to, nobody gets hurt, or so the other hand will make sure that everybody sleeps safe.
We were part of the rehabilitation. We thought we were building the new Afghanistan.
Exactly.
We were part of that process after the year 2001, 2002.
And this is a whole new government change, right?
This is a whole new government. When the Karzai government came in, and Karzai government came into power, right? You could literally, in the first 3 years of Karzai government, right? You could literally travel the entire country by road, and you would hardly encounter a single Taliban.
I kind of want to know a little bit more about the work you guys did during the Islamic Republic government, which is, I believe, under Karzai and Ashraf Ghani. I know you guys were both involved. I know the intentions were, like you guys said, rehabilitation. There was a lot of new changes coming. The country was modernizing in various ways. Omar Jan, can you start us off and tell us a little bit about what you did, and then we can transition to Samir Jan as well.
When the government formed, I was in Pakistan. So I was just in high school, graduated, very fresh. Somebody told me at MSI there was an agency or an NGO that was hiring. So I started the first job. I went to the MSI. I think they were hiring me. They never hired me. But I was keep going around the streets and looking for jobs, and a person who used to earn his own money. And I was looking at my father. He has no money, and every day it was like I used to 100,000 Afghani. I used to ask that, can I have money? Can I have money? Copy, and they call it CV or resume. They just keep printing it, and I nobody. And I used to walk from Makran, it was like at Makran, all the way to the Intercontinental Hotel by walk every single day, because someone told me that the ISAF troops are coming there to look around the city. I said I might get a job as an interpreter over there. The first job I got it there, $5, $10 actually. I had the pride on myself, like how could somebody give me
$10 a day?
Huh?
$10 a day?
No, $10 the first job. The guy came in.
Okay.
I
Like
think
per gig, something like that.
per
a
gig.
European
Okay.
troop came in. It was like all these military guys, and he said, "Okay, I should just give them a brief introduction about that, what they were looking at from the Baghbala." And as a good faith, that guy gave me a $10 or $5, and I had this pride. I never wanted to give her like free money, so and said I can't take the free money. And instead, how about if I give you this notebook? I had this notebook like very close to my heart, so I gave it to him. I came and ran down. I gave it to my father. And in fact, there was one other Afghan guy with me. I gave him a $5 to him. So I said, "Hey, you keep this $5, I keep $5." And I walked down towards the Khoi Markaz, the area.
Yeah.
So I gave that $5 to my father. And that haunted my father for till today. He would feel so like happy, and also like you feel the pride. I look at them like, $5, it's not a big money, but having this intention to giving his first earnings.
Absolutely.
Then from there I took off. I started working. I want to just take it back. A woman heard this story of mine that every day I walk, and that is how I did. And she asked me to come to his house. We're living in the same apartment complex. And she said, tomorrow morning, go to there's a agency or NGO called IRC, and they will hire you. They hired me as site foreman. The reason I'm going back to that, because an incident happened with me. So I got hired as a site foreman. It's just like a construction. I don't know what they call it in English, corres. There was a wheels, but all wheels are connected.
Mm-hmm.
So those wheels in Paghman district, during the time of the Russians, what happened? Some Afghans would try to hide themselves inside those wells, and Russians came in and they put the grenades over there. So all of them were blocked, and you could find the humans' bones over there.
Mm-hmm.
So my job was there to just making sure to take a look at it. But it's my first job. I thought it's very good. I took it very seriously. I took the rope and I put my feet and I go underneath the
You would go in the well?
Yes.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
after that I came back. I think there was some sort of a gas. So when I come back, I fainted. I think I passed out basically. I
Might
said I
have
will take a
lacked
nap.
oxygen.
Yeah, maybe. So later on, after 2 hours, I wake up, and those guys said, they used to call me Engineer Saib. So for them, I was an engineer, right? So I said, Engineer Saib, are you okay? So I'm fine. They took this to the IRC. And IRC project manager called me there. What the hell are you doing? Why are you going there? I said, no, somebody told me you don't measure it properly. I said, you guys are not doing a good job. Let me go down and check it out.
Wow.
So from there, it's like slowly I started working. I will just like make the story a little shorter. Then I started working for different companies. I think with Kabul Serena Hotel, something I wanted to mention that still our Afghans doesn't value that working for a hotel industry. Everybody thinks you're a waiter.
Yep.
So I joined Kabul Serena Hotel. It was a very pride for us because the old Kabul Hotel and changed it to Serena 5-star with the standards. And I was the first spokesperson for the Serena when we did the grand opening, and I met Prince Karim Aga Khan also. It was very like a big thing at that time.
Is
I
this
was
because
one
you
of-
spoke English?
Yes,
Hmm.
French basically, but yes. But I remember I was on the phone with Voice of America, and there was another one. I don't remember that radio, but I was on the call with them to explain everything.
Wow.
And my sales and marketing director said to the Prince Karim Aga Khan, said, hey, sir, do you know that Omar is on the news or the Reuters? So that was one of the big achievements I considered, like being a part of that. But still people say, Buru biadarda wa talent was me. So like, come on, really? I'm not asking you to come in to join our hotel. I'm here to explain this. We can have these banquet halls and meetings and all this stuff. And I'm representing a totally different side of it, but not here to just sell the food or stuff to it. And later on, I joined the helping out with the U.S. government. So I started with a translator in a office called SIU. It's a Sensitive Investigative Unit, which was oversight or monitored by DEA. Then with the U.S. Embassy and all the projects we did that. And from that, I had like a lot of crazy and funny and unexpected and very sad stories. But I'll let Samir John to share also.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, back in northern Afghanistan, when the transition happened, I was fresh out of high school, and we had just passed our exam to go to university. So in that process, I was actually looking for a job, and then at that time, of course, I spoke English because I graduated from this school called Afghan-Turk High School, and in that school, the level of education was higher than the level of education you would get in Afghan public schools. And for you to actually have that level of English or that level of understanding of English, you would have to go to a private course and then take tuitions. And after that, you would have to work really, really hard to actually understand English to that level that we understood going to this school. So I was looking for translator jobs. I remember I went with my dad. We went to the foreign office, the foreign ministry's office in the city of Mazar Sharif. That's where a lot of these foreigners or journalists would come in, and these journalists would look for a translator for them to actually take them to the field, because northern Afghanistan was the hot thing in the news. There was like trending all the news, that everybody from all parts of the world was pouring in here, and all these journalists, they needed a translator to take them around, to show them around. And then of course I tried so much, went office to office and office. Unfortunately, they were only giving these jobs to people that they knew, or people that were I would say their relatives, or people that they actually had connections. So I had no connection, right? So I would go there. I had these resumes similar to yours. We used to call them curriculum vitae, in the bold, and I had copies of that. I would go say, hey, I'm graduated from the school. I speak English. At that time, I spoke English, Pashto, Uzbek, Turkish, and then Farsi, of course. So I spoke 5 languages fluently.
Wow.
And I'm like, you could use me, right? This is me. I'm here. Let's go. But they would not. So I stumbled upon this position in the United Nations Joint Logistics Center. It's United Nations body that actually goes to crisis countries and set up the pathway for other organizations to come in. So if a disaster happens in a country, this agency would go in, then they would identify warehouses, ports, let's say airports, every single thing, and they would have pocket maps prepared for all these other agencies to come in. So they would hand them over, hey, this is the route you can use if you're bringing food items. This is the route you can use if you're bringing non-food items. These are the warehouses you can store what you're bringing. So we would make their life easy. This organization had just started, and they were looking for somebody to do their data entry. So they were looking for a data entry clerk. I went and I met my boss, Adrian. He was from Netherlands. And so I went to the door to actually meet him. He was in a meeting, and the guard said, just Amuja Bosch, just wait. I said, okay. I was there 9 o'clock in the morning. It was a little over 7:30 in the evening that this person was trying to go to his guest house, and he came out, and the guard is like, this is the guy who you're trying to meet. And I have been there the entire day at the door waiting for him. So I took the opportunity. I said, this is who I am. I really want to have like 5 minutes with you if you would have time tomorrow. And I know that you're looking for a data entry clerk. Will it work? What time would work? And he said, you know what? Why don't you come in 8 o'clock tomorrow morning? I said, okay, I'll be there 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. He did commend me that, oh, you speak fluent English. I said, yeah, I tried to. I left. Went home, very happy. Couldn't sleep throughout the night, I'm sure. And waited. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a golden opportunity. You're gonna go talk to somebody inside the United Nations. And the next day, 8 o'clock in the morning, I went there. He said, okay, so I'm looking for somebody who's really good in Excel. Back in the school, my friends, my nickname for them was Excel, because I was so good in Excel that everybody would call me Excel. So I'm like, okay, this is the opportunity for you to actually show what you actually know. So the spreadsheet they had were very complicated spreadsheets, because you have agencies, hundreds of agencies bringing 200, 300 items each and bringing it into the country for aid, and you have to keep track of that. So he gave me a document and he said, can you make charts? Can you show me what are the food and non-food items that entered the country in the past 1 week? I said, okay. I sat there, I would say 5 minutes, had the chart graphs for him, and he saw that, you know what? Can you start work from today? And I said, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, for right now, since we are not under contract, since the office has started, I'd like to start you as a daily wage. So you'll start as a daily wage worker for $10 a day. $10 a day back then was a lot of money.
Just hold your thought. I want to share something that's like, I don't want to forget that. He had a very, I call it the easy path to get to that job. I remember, so during this struggle times to get into to work, so my uncle, he took me to one of his friend's offices, those construction companies.
Okay.
Those guys had this like a Word document and gave it to me. I created a table. Later on, they wanted to first something on that paper. He gave it to me. They said, like, okay, now make like this. I said, okay. It took me a couple of hours to make that thing. I couldn't do it. They were so pissed off at me. Like, how could you say that you know Word, Excel, all this stuff? Exactly, same word. I computer kar است $200 ماش میده. Like I give him $200, like a monthly salary, whatever you call it. And I fell in it. I went to the bathroom and you have to use. So there's the bad thing happened. I used the restroom. I come out. I thought there's a water and I just throw out and flush everything out. Later I noticed that wasn't a water. That was a gasoline for the generator. And they were so mad at me.
Oh.
Because of my uncle, they kept that job for me. And I would have kicked mine and said, get out of here. There's no job for you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
The struggle.
You couldn't tell between the gasoline and water?
It was dark, man. And
Sitting in the bathroom, come on.
I said, like,
Just pour
okay. Man, and it was not in an actual, like, proper gallon. It was just like in a...
In a bucket?
No, like a portion, what do they call it? Little jug stuff.
Yeah.
What would you say was the peak of your career in Afghanistan? What were you doing?
Well, as soon as I started with the United Nations, I started as a data entry clerk. Within 6 months of that job, I was invited to come to Kabul and be part of a task force. And the task force was for the currency exchange program. So Afghanistan used to have a denomination that was worthless. A dollar at that time was, I think, 50,000 Afghan rupees.
Wow.
Or Afghanis. I should not say rupees. So Afghanis, right? So that project, I came into Kabul. That exposed me to a lot of other agencies and a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
In that process, I used to frequently meet with delegations, high-ranking officials. But then, what I would say the peak of my career was when I was working for the INL contractor, the U.S. Department of State's INL contractor, CSSP, which was the Correctional System Support Program. With them, I was the project advisor for their case management and prison classification. So we were the people who actually made sure that anybody who is in the prison has got at least 3 files. They have a social file, a medical file, and a legal file.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at Afghanistan has been a war-torn country. Somebody would be in jail because of somebody's phone call. And that person would sit in jail with nobody even knowing why he's there and when he came in or what happened. So we were there to make sure that everybody goes due process. Actually, they have a prosecutor, they have a defense, and of course, they see a judge, and judge tells them how long they're going to stay. Because we have throughout our career, when we started processing all these cases or reviewing all the cases, we found out people that were there because of a dispute that they had with a commander. And this commander got pissed off, called the warden and said, hey, I'm sending you this and this. Why don't you keep him there for, let's say, a couple of weeks till he understands the value of whatever and he knows who I am. And then I will call you back and you release him. So the warden would have this person in the jail, right, or the prison. And by some miracle, warden and this other person would just forget about this guy who was in the prison. And this guy would be in prison for 2 years. Not have seen a single judge, does not have a single file. There's no charge sheet. There's no arrest. There's no warrant. Nothing. So we would go there. We would find these people. and we'd document everything, and we'll make sure if they have nothing, they will be released. And that was a successful project that we took, and that would say I would say that was the peak of my career, because we were making we were impacting people's lives. We were there for the good. I have literally sat and met and interviewed Taliban fighters face to face, like me and you sitting together.
Mm-hmm.
I have had a team of 84 case managers and classification managers throughout Afghanistan that we would bring into Kabul. We would train them. We would hire them. We would train them and send them back. And they would go and sit an interview. So I would go to Pulacharki prison, for example, or the women's prison, or the Kabul detention center, or the narcotics prison where you used to work. So we would go to these prisons, and then we would interview everybody. And through that process, in the first year, we were able to release, I believe, was 167 individuals.
Wow.
Within the first year. These are all the people that were in prison with no documentation and no crimes committed. They were just there for the sake of somebody sending them there.
That's a very impactful position that you were in.
Like actually changing lives. How did that feel when you got them released?
Well, it felt the moment that it will make you very emotional is when you would see them unite with their families. A lot of these people that were in prison, when they would get out, they would not even have a single Afghani in their pocket for them to actually make it anywhere. And you would ask them, okay, where do you want to go? And they would not know where they're going, because for them, they're like, I don't remember my home. My family used to live here, but since I was incarcerated, I don't even know if they could afford to stay in that property anymore. So I'm not sure if they are there or not. There were no phone numbers. He had no contact of anybody. So then we would try to communicate with other agencies, and we would try to get them help. And in some cases, before we would release them, we would find their family members to come and actually take them or sign off for them. So that when you see them reunite with their family, that's the moment you say, you know what, this is really worth it.
That's amazing.
Do they allow visitations in prisons at that time?
Or do you mean just visitations, or are you trying to go somewhere?
No, just visitations.
Okay.
I think everything was allowed at that time. I know.
Because yes, they do. Well,
like were the families allowed to come and visit?
yes, the families would come allowed to visit. They were allowed conjugal visits also.
Okay.
So to answer that question, back in every prison, prison in Afghanistan, the visitation area is different. Of course, it's designed differently. But given the cultural differences and also sensitivities of Afghans, they would build these in prison built tents. They would have these small tents that they would put in the recreation area during visitation days. So each prison would have a tent. And then their family would come in, and then they would just go inside the tent and then talk, and of course they would have food, drinks, and all that, and then they would leave. So, but throughout the process of us changing the way the government, the way that prisons operated, we had to change a lot of that. We had to systemize a lot of things. For example, a prisoner in Afghanistan used to be recorded as their first and last name. Okay, how many Ahmads do you think are there in prison?
Hundreds, thousands.
Right? So that's how they would look for somebody. If you're looking for somebody's record, let's say Ahmad somebody, right? They would look for that first name and then the last name and the father's name, the grandfather's name to find that person. We came in and we introduced a PIN number, which is a prisoner identification number. So with a prisoner identification number, it's easier for you to actually understand who the prisoner is, right? So the prisoner would hold a prisoner identification number, and then we'll take a picture, put it in his record, and they will, of course, it will go to their file. So it makes it easier for them to know where this person is, which block they're in, what's their health status, have they been to the doctor, have they been to the dentist, when was their last checkup, for example, what are the symptoms they had, every single detail. We would make sure that every prisoner has these information, because prior to that, you don't have. In Afghanistan, there is no segregation in prisons, right? You would have a guy who would come into the prison as a petty theft, right, or pickpocket, and they would put him with a suicide bomber. Next thing you know, you have 2 suicide bombers. Because he would make sure that he's going to brainwash him to the extent that when the guy gets out, because they did not have segregation at that time. So we had to come in and say, hey, you can't have everybody in Gen Pop. You really have to make sure to segregate them based on their crimes and their behaviors and all those systems. So we would actually make sure everybody was treated fairly and they had access to their legal files, to their medical files, and also to their social files. And also they would have defense and doctor and all that stuff.
I want to take it back to your time with the currency exchange project, and then after that, I definitely want to get to Omar John, because I know he's done some really interesting stuff when he worked with the DEA. But when you guys were doing that, how did you guys get rid of the old currency?
It's a funny story. The beginning of the process, we actually started. We thought, okay, we are going to go ahead and drill the money. So we actually asked a few carpenters to make empty blocks. We would put money bundles, and the money would go in there. We'd get a drill. Somebody's gonna get a drill bit and then drill it all the way, and that's it, right? So money is gonna get drilled. Drilled money is money we have received, and the person have already taken new money in exchange for it. But Afghanistan's money, the material actually, it's not. It wasn't actually. It's not easy paper that you can actually drill through. You can drill a couple of them, but when you're drilling a bundle, the bundle shatters. So now you have money that's rotating. It spins around with your drill bit, and it's a chaos. It's everywhere. So that didn't work. Then we thought about burning money. So there was ovens behind the Ministry of Justice in Kabul. So we used to take money there, and then we would try to burn it. Now the burning process, in a few cases, we found out that when they would try to burn this money, the money which is inside the stacks, because the stacks are so big, right? The money that's inside the stack would not burn. And they had no means of somebody actually getting access to the money and then rotating it or shaking it around for it to actually burn thoroughly. They would put gasoline over it, right? But then there was still money that would not burn.
Some leftovers.
Some or when the process of them, when they would take the money to burn it and they would toss it inside the oven, there would be somebody behind the oven that would receive that money, okay? And then we have had instances of that. So it didn't work. So that received money, I know you're curious, they would take it back to the process and then they would exchange it for new money. So you did not get rid of the money. The money is still in circulation. And then we came up with a way that, okay, let's say we're going to get buckets of ink, okay? You bring in old money, we exchange for new money, we would put it in a bucket of ink, and then we would take it out, so that money is got color on it, like, or bleach on it. It would be a mess. It wouldn't work. The only way that it worked was for us to shred money. So we imported shredders from Germany, the huge shredders. And everything I'm talking about was all during the pilot project. We were doing a pilot project to see what works best. So then we imported shredders from Germany, and that's when it actually worked, like, seamlessly. So we took these shredders, we send them, of course, in rural areas of Afghanistan, we still had to burn money. We asked them to actually split money into smaller bundles and then toss them in there, not in big stacks. And they would burn, and the entire burning would be videotaped, and it would be for evidences. But in Kabul and main provinces like Mazar-e-Sharif, and then let's say Herat, and all these main places, we had shredders. And these shredders they would take the money in there. Of course, you have intake staff that they would record how much money came in, and they would take shred that money. And the new money, of course, whenever it would come in, it would come in military aircrafts, in C-130s, C-130s and C-10s. It would come in, and they would put it on.
So it wasn't printed in Afghanistan?
No, the money was printed in Germany.
Oh, interesting.
Afghanistan did not have the means of actually printing money, or they did not have a printing
Do you know
machine.
if it's still printed in Germany?
It's not printed in Afghanistan. I know that for a fact.
Oh, wow.
Afghanistan does not have the resources to actually print it.
Even
for
our
money.
passports are been printed by another country.
Passports, I think, are printed in
Finland?
Dubai or Finland somewhere.
I remember
know.
because recently I heard one of our family friends, they used to work with the IOM. And the IOM, the political section, they were saying that there's 100,000 books of passports are still available. And the Taliban government right now, they're asking for it. Like, okay, that's basically our right to have our own passports. They didn't give it to them. But I heard there was a rumors that certain families who lives in Afghanistan have connection within the consulates of Afghanistan, around the world. They can go there and they can get the new passport, or you can renew your passports. And they said, well, we don't have it. And there's no legit government anymore, like versus two government. Then the Finland or Germany, but the Germany had the responsibility to deliver that to Afghanistan.
Yep.
So that's why, and they now distributed some of the passports. And I'm sure like 2 years ago, no one was able to get that renewal 2 to 3 years ago. But now, yes, now you go to like the closest one for us is
Los
Vancouver.
Angeles.
Is it in Canada, right?
It's for us, it's Los Angeles.
No more Los Angeles.
It's not.
No, they closed in Los Angeles. I
The
remember I
consulate?
renewed mine. I had to send it to New York, and the New York office, that was the last batch they processed. Then after that, they said no more. They will go to Canada.
Did they put that new page for you? That sticker.
I believe I have it. I don't remember, but
Yeah,
yes.
that's how they renewed it. So they would put a new sticker over where you have your picture. Behind that, they'll just give you a new sticker.
Or maybe
and
I
that's it.
have a brand new. I don't know, but maybe you're right. Absolutely.
Omar, do you remember if you ever had to go exchange your currency?
No,
You didn't have to do it?
no, because at that time I was in Pakistan.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so I had a little rough childhood.
Okay.
I think since the Taliban came in, we were talking about that. Before we started, we were talking about it. And in Kabul, especially in all over Afghanistan, the schools were very disciplined. You need to have a uniform, short hair, because of, I think they had a concept when you get into a fight with things and it's easy, they can pull your hair. So that in order to stop the mass and everybody doesn't look like big hair, small or short.
Discipline,
so
like the army too. They're kind of
Exactly.
like that.
So there's a very, as long as it's not, you can have it, then that's good to go.
Mhm.
But I had a little longer, and everybody was used to wear a little turban, like white color especially, or those white hats, or this especially there's a kandori hat they have. It's like a little arch on it. So then you turn it around. But if you wanted to show your hair, you can just bring this. Otherwise, you turn it around and you cover everything.
I know which ones you're talking about. I had one growing up as a kid.
Bro, remember you wore one in Davis? It was so beautiful. It was like golden. We made a video in it.
Oh, are you talking about the ones that Awais brought us?
No. Those are the pacols. You had another one, and then I remember someone told me like, why did you let Noori wear it? And I was like, no, that looked really good.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember now. Yeah, I forgot about that. But go ahead.
No, then at that day, before something happened to me in school, I told my father, they said, I'm not going to school today because if I go there, they're going to cut my hair. I said, no, ain't a typical Afghan father. I said, no, nothing happened, Maxim. Boris Kapinis. Everything is fine. I said, okay. I went to school. Our principal came in. I remember my principal. He had a long hair too, but he was used to cover it with the turban. So no problem for him. And he came in and around the class walking around and cutting everyone's hair. But they used to cut so precise. Go down like there's no way. You have to shave it. So he went all around the class. I said, thank God I'm safe. Next thing you know, a big scissor came in right on this side, and they cut it. And, you have no choice. And then I had to go and shave that. And now still I don't proper balance, I believe so. That's I have is from there. But going back to your question about this, the money thing and stuff, I remember my father's exchange, but later on I remember because we used to work. We didn't know each other, but the same project we were working. Especially about embezzlement and corruption, and especially the narcotics was a huge thing about it. And And that was a perfect timing for them to do a launder money. You have a money, there's no proof on it, but you bring it and you got a brand new money.
Yep.
Here we go.
There are no questions asked.
Yeah, that's the time. I worked a lot on that portion of it. Like, okay, how did it? I can't call myself that I was a part or a member of it, but I was a little tiny person who helped a little bit in translation, assisting and coordinating the meetings to legislate the first Afghan money laundering law. And also we did come a little improvement on counter narcotics law as well.
What kind of people were laundering money?
It comes on a lot of people on it. So, as you know, that we're all those third world countries, they have always problem with the immigration. So everybody wants to migrate to another country, or they smuggle them at another country. So those are the people. At first, the Sarai Shahzada was like a money exchange market of Kabul.
Yep.
There, they controlled the whole country, and it still does. And they had the control of everything. If you want to pay for a suicide bomber, you gotta go there. That's a transaction happens. You wanna go to U.S., you gotta go pay your money. Then what's that? So your money is guaranteed over there.
Is it?
When you touch down, that's the time they release.
Would you say it's like the Afghan, like Wall Street?
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like a little like a third class, but
Yeah, of course.
But the
anything and
others,
everything
like the
happens there.
launders, were like I remember I worked several cases. A very good example. So we have money. The money came in very clean. How we got the money in Afghanistan? We get sugar from Venezuela, but through so many other countries to Afghanistan. That's how they say it instead. برو بچه میگه از ونزوئلا بوره بخر که ارزان هست اینجا. I remember like high political or high officials, they told me like this is a good spot. They buy sugar. Or we had a lot of Japanese cars in Afghanistan. Very popular Corolla. Every single person had it.
Word.
So you get a Corolla, but in the meantime, you can buy the Corolla or parts of Corolla. You import it to Kabul, Afghanistan. They sell it. The proceed of that money, it goes back to them. Then they buy, they process, and they sell it. How we get the money in Afghanistan? Through the products. Because Afghanistan had, the higher thing was importing. Import every single thing. We had nothing. Barely some fruits and dry fruits we used to export. Saffron came in later on, but prior to that, nothing much. So for them was a perfect market. Who was funding, going back to your question, how they do it, about the money laundering, and who were the people who were doing that. For example, the drug dealers were hiring insurgents. Insurgents, you can call it anyone, or Taliban. Then they used to protect that land. And the drug lords were just processing poppy, have the poppy process, and they sell it. Then go through Iran, Pakistan, but most like Iran and Turkey. So like Turkish country, I think Turkey, Iran, and also Pakistan. But on the other hand, we had Uzbekistan and Tajikistan.
Mm-hmm.
There was a high volume. We're going to those countries. Major problem we had, we never produced drugs, but we were forced to produce. We need the material from the other countries.
Yep.
The best acidic anhydride, or AA, which is very popular to them, it comes from Germany. It comes from Turkey. Come from Pakistan. The only thing was used from Afghanistan was the seeds of poppy, and they said, okay, make them cultivate. Okay, that's fine. You cultivate. The poppy eradication team came in and destroyed everything. No problem. But the leftovers they processed, but everything was from that people, and that's how the money came in. Launder, send it out there, buy parts, cars, food. It's like Pakistan was a big like exporter for us, and we get all the monies from there.
Yeah, we are very thankful for our neighbors.
And I have to say that when he was mentioning about the, how it changes life or stuff, during the Taliban time, people fled to two countries, more specifically, Pakistan and Iran. Those guys who went to Pakistan, they learned, they were educated. They came with something, and they are working in everywhere, like pretty much in the offices. Those guys who went to Iran, they never allowed them to study.
Mm.
So they became like maybe like a mason, labor, or work like in a body shop or something. Nothing. The only maybe a skilled work,
Or a
but
drug addict.
educational work, nothing.
Or a drug addict.
Exactly.
Oh, I've actually heard about that a
Hey,
lot.
Alex, absolutely. That's a normal thing.
95% of drug addicts in Afghanistan, because we lived in Kabul, right? 2003, 4, 5, all the way to 2010, right? Even if you see it up till today, if you see the number of drug addicts that actually came into the country, they were not addicts from the country itself. They were immigrants that went to Iran and came back. And they got everybody else involved into drugs. And then you have the infamous Pula Sokhta in Kabul, of course. And you have the deaths. And then the Taliban, you might have seen the videos of them who went all around the city to gather them, take them to rehab and all that.
Yeah.
We got
Majority of them
inherited
came
two
from those
things from
countries.
them. One from Pakistan, we got the corruption. Trust me, that's how everyone learned from that. Then addicts all came in from there. I remember my grandfather told me once, he said that during his time, like most likely in mid-80s, like someone took a bribe within our district. And he said that in the morning, when we went to the pray, nobody wanted to stand next to that guy. He said, oh, he's a corrupt. How could we stand next to this person? But 2003, because I learned in Pakistan, I seen it. I remember my grandma asked me to go pay the electricity bill. I went to the like a small office of Pakistan to pay. I said, I can't do it. Like it's okay. Just give a little money. We'll take care of it.
Yep.
I pay 100 Pakistani rupees, and they changed the bill from 400 to 3 something adjusted, and they made it on a kind of a monthly payments divided on it, and that's all.
So you're saying that corruption wasn't part of like the fabric of Afghan society? It was introduced from
It was
neighbors.
absolutely.
Interesting.
No, Afghanistan in overall was an amazing country, perfect in everything. We were good. We're intelligent. We are very smart, but you know what? You know that they are saying in Afghanistan that every person learn from his own neighbors. You go to Mazar Sharif, you learn, you see how people wear clothes, how they speak, how they talk, how they decorate their city. It's like more like a Western style. You go towards the Herat, you feel like, okay, I'm in Iran. So clean and neat and everything. You go towards Jalalabad, then you'll see a different vibe of it. It's like you're like in Peshawar. It's like everybody speak the same language. Even their currency is working up there. It's like,
Absolutely.
you can exchange. And when you go there, that was a like funny part. Like you buy like, I swear it's 100 rupees. He swears 100 rupees. And he's not wrong. He just corrected himself a couple of minutes ago. He said, I should say Afs or Afghani, not rupees. I said, I'm saying it's rupees. I'm not swearing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at corruption in Afghanistan, and if you read history of Afghanistan, right, corruption, it might have been there. There's not a single government in the face of the earth that is not corrupt, right? The corruption is there, but it's not practiced openly as it was practiced in the past 20 years. Okay, if you look at the so-called government that they call the communists, right? Ministers, I would say minister of, let's say, defense, or high delegate officials, or high ranking officials of the government, all they had to show up for all the years of the hard work that they did was a single apartment that was given to them by the government, or a single land that was given to them by the government. They had no mansions. They had no Swiss accounts. They did not have houses in Dubai or Turkey or any other places. Although they could have embezzled money and they could have made a whole lot fortune, but they did not have it. So that actually tells you that during those times, people actually the way to put it is they had themselves accountable. So they would always have the self-guilt. If they would have done something wrong, they would be their own judge, and they would actually go and say, you know what, this is not good. I should not do. Not because of the society. It's because of the upbringing that they had. It's because of the values that they had, the things that they stood for, right? But unfortunately, with the fall of the government of Dr. Najibullah and the coming of Mujahideen into Afghanistan, that's when it started, the wave of embezzlement and also money laundering and all that stuff started, and we got to a point that it just became normal practice. You go to any agency and you want to get something done, you had to bribe your way out. So that became to this point. It is true that it was actually an imported phenomenon into the Afghan culture, and it never existed before.
I mean, we spoke about so many, different aspects of living in Afghanistan, whether it's, during, like you said, the so-called communist times or the civil war, or the Taliban rule. And then again, after that, a U.S.-backed government. It was so tumultuous. Things were like changing. You guys traveled the country and saw the diversity there and, the relationships with their neighbors and how that affected Afghanistan. And then next thing you know, you guys are in America. So, and America, as we all know, very different. I would say maybe a little bit more homogenous, a little bit less diversity. I mean, there's a lot of diversity here for sure, but in terms of how the society's pretty homogenous. Tell us about how you guys made the adjustments that you had to make when you guys moved here, like the different cultural norms, the different societal norms. What shocked you guys? What did you not expect? And tell us about the opportunities you guys found here.
I think he came first, so you go first.
Yes, life in the U.S. Well, before you come into the U.S., of course, you have perception. You have this thing you have seen in Hollywood. You have seen movies, right? To better understand English and to better understand vocabulary and also add words, I used to see a lot of movies, and then I would actually write down dialogues of the movies, then open a Merriam dictionary, and then try and look up the words and what it meant and all that. So I had a perception. Now,
let me ask you, before you go, were you excited to come here?
Oh, absolutely. It's really hard for you to leave your homeland, thinking that you don't know if you're ever gonna go back or not, of course. But the opportunity that you can give to your children, that's what actually causes you to actually leave and gives you the energy for you to make that decision and to come to the U.S. Because I wanted to make sure that I give a better future for my children that I might not have had the opportunity, or my father did not have the opportunity, or the environment or the society was not in that I would say it wasn't aligned to give us that, right? So I wanted to do that for my children. So we were very excited, of course. When I came into the U.S., the first 6 months, as soon as I came into California. So the first 6 months, the very first thing they did is they take you to. Now it's gonna touch into a lot of subjects. The very first thing you do when you come into the country is they take you to they take you to the social services office. Okay, and then the social services office, they ask you to actually apply for ABT. So you do apply for ABT, and then your ABT and cash it starts because you came with a special immigrant visa. So your green card and your social security.
The infamous SIV.
Yes, the infamous SIV. So actually, your social security and also green card comes in automatically. You don't have to apply. You don't have to go. Back then, at least that was the case. I did not apply for it. It came in automatically because it was part of the process. So the first 6 months, I tried very hard to look for a job that's similar to what I did back in Afghanistan. So I tried offices, counties. I tried private businesses. So I was actually looking for a desk job. and something that, because I'm really good with data, I did a lot of analytics, and also I did a lot of regulations, rule making, and policy making, and all that. So I was looking for something like that, but I wasn't able to even land a single interview, because competition in the U.S. is not as competition back home.
Mm-hmm.
Back home, if you have better your skill in a field, you have a better chance of getting that job because there's not much competition. But in here, when you are applying for a position, it's not you applying for the position. Actually, 500 more people that applies, and your resume goes through a process of, back then, of course, it wasn't AI, but of course, computer would sort your resume before you can actually make it to actual person, and talk to them. So I wasn't able to land that job. So the very first thing that I was able to get, which was totally different to what I did back home, was I started as a salesperson in a jewelry store. So that was shocking for me. That was the shock of me coming into the U.S. and seeing, because I had met so many American counterparts. I used to even have a cultural awareness presentation for counterparts that would come into Afghanistan, because these are people that might not have been outside the U.S. All their life, and they're coming to Afghanistan to work with you. So I would gather them all in a class, and then give them a 2 hours presentation and tell them what Afghanistan is, what's the culture, what are differences, what are sensitivities, and when they're working in Afghanistan, what do they have to watch out for. So, but I didn't have that. When I came into the U.S., nobody gave me that cultural awareness. I did not have somebody who would give me the differences of me as an Afghan, being in Afghanistan all my life, and coming into the U.S., what are the things that I really have to look out for? One other thing that I struggled really, really hard was getting paid twice a month. That's not something we're used to back home. We get paid once a month. At least that was the case for me, and I know a lot of people that they get paid once a month. So that change, for you to actually budget accordingly, you require that information for somebody to actually give you that information ahead of time, or to prepare you for it. But I did not have that. So that's the point of the excitement, and also the shock that was in the very, very big beginning of me coming into the U.S.
Was your experience similar to that?
Not at all. I think it's a little different. Prior coming to the U.S., I used to work for U.S. Embassy, so I got used to life of how you live in U.S. and like paycheck to paycheck, but I was making enough there. It was like good enough for another year. So, but apart from that, when getting a job or coming here, I was excited, yes. But on the other hand, the way we left Kabul was very unexpected. We were expecting our second child, our oldest son, Adam. And they said, okay, let's rush. And we got here. Thank you to Mansoor John and his family and the rest of the families. They hosted us for 30 days, actually more than 30 days, till the time we found our house. I think same like Samir John mentioned, that everyone has his own perception. Okay, like U.S., there's a two ways, like how my business partner always talks. He said, Omar, I remember, like I was thinking when I come to U.S., I either see New York, like how you see a busy streets and like lights and a city never sleeps. On the other hand, and maybe like Texas, cowboy, and that's the two things. The moment we landed in San Francisco, I saw that 230 people standing on the same line, screaming kids and how it's hard to go through this line, and the Homeland Security. And I'm very thankful to one of those officers. He looked at it, I see my wife is pregnant. You can see her from her face, 15 and a half hours of flight. He said, you cut the line, come in. And they process. Then second, we go to the secondary office, 3 hours. Poor girl, she fall asleep on the floor. I mean, it's all right. Then we got out. And when we come out, we said, okay, is this U.S.? Especially San Francisco roads. The highway is like all cracked. Said, okay, it's another Kabul. And the second, I don't want to name the part of the town that I live right now. But I came towards the South Sac, and I got apartment. It took us like very, very... thanks to a certain number of families, they helped us out to go through all the process. Same thing, SIV, all the stuff. Getting an apartment was very hard. Nobody was supposed to give us, their paychecks to at least just do a co-signer, because the other Others that had the same life and they wanted to just live on based on the cash aid and food stamp they had it. I don't want to go into detail of that, but I want to share a couple of experiences where every time I applied a job, it was very hard for me because my standard was very different than them. And they say I'm too overqualified. I'll keep that story to the end also. But it took me long time to get a job. Finally, there's a one and only place every single Afghan who can start a job easily is a vault. So you got to go to Apple Warehouse. I started my first job was at Apple Warehouse. I remember, and that was the first job. Slowly, then I got into the Uber and the other. But life, Kabul versus US is absolutely different.
100%.
I think I was 31 years old when I got here, or 30 years old. In the 30 years of my life, I've been away from my mom and dad. I grew up with my grandparents, but life was very different. I used to help at the house, and it's just like then when I started actually working, making money, I was just a money provider. My father used to bring all the groceries and everything, and I was just watching the financial side of it. When I got here, I was a father. I was a person who had to financially support the family and a partner and stuff. Like previously, I wasn't even care. In Afghanistan, when you have a baby for a couple of days, you're away. You're not supposed to get into that room. But in here, they send me to the labor room right away. Trust me.
They give you the cord to cut.
Exactly. It's just like, okay. And said, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what they did, the cutting.
The umbilical cord?
Yeah, they gave me the my hands were shaking. And I'm not going to do that. You know, you feel it.
I didn't do it.
But being in that environment suddenly is very, very hard. I learned things more. I'm thankful. I learned a lot of stuff here that I have never learned in Afghanistan. We just mentioned before we going on air, like how you can connect another socket to another one.
Yep.
I couldn't do it in back. I mean, I could, but never took the courage to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or use a drill or another stuff.
Yeah.
Or your father, I remember we went to the U-Haul. First time, he asked me like, to go get the key. And I drove the 16-foot truck. I never drove a truck before. I just little, something like just regular car. Then next you go to 16, the 26, then bigger than that. This country is different. Kabul, when you start job and you finish, that's the limit. After 5 p.m., 6, 7, 8, you're done. You got home, no tension, no pressure. Tomorrow you have another day, let's do it. We do it. I worked like 16 years, non-stop. I never felt tired. But in here, you work 1 week. At the end of the week, ask me the question, then I'll answer, or you will answer the question by yourself. Here is tiring. Here is a system. You have to be on the cycle. You miss the beat, you miss the whole thing. Everybody will get after you. Say, why? Come on. I seen it, the way the operation works. If doctors stop coming to work, everybody's sick. There's so many call sicks. Then if a delivery man or a postman doesn't deliver, then half of the world doesn't know what's happening around them. And we are so connected. In here, I feel the value of relationships are getting a little apart because of we don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I miss, like you mentioned at the beginning, like where you would like to be, for 1 year. I'm thinking if I want to retire somewhere, I want to go back somewhere like where people value the relationship. It does. But here is too much pressure. Like you don't get it the time that you deserve. But you have to buy that time here. Back home you don't.
You don't have to buy it. Plus you kind of think that maybe back home time wasn't we were not living in the same in the same time frame or in the same I would say how do you put this?
Time moved differently.
It's not even you could say that, yes. So you would literally think that maybe we were in a different black hole, that time was applied differently in Afghanistan than it is over here, because back home you would work but you would still have time for friends, you would have time for family, you would have time for everything, right? Here you have to plan ahead of times for you to do anything. If you are planning on meeting with somebody, you have to at least plan that ahead of time, at least a week ahead, for it actually doesn't coincide with other stuff that you have, or you have appointments, for example. To some extent, I think when you look at life, this is the system that this country was built on, and they have accustomed to this system, and they have lived this way, and they have actually liked it or didn't like it, but they had to live the way that they live right now, right? Is it the best way of living? No. Why? Because if you watch Europeans, or you watch documentaries about Europeans, or their way of life, or their way of schooling, for example, their time is different. Their way of actually living is different. Their living standards are different than what is in U.S. They actually look at the U.S. and they laugh. But this is the system that they have applied, they have lived, and we have to just follow the masses. That's why that transition for us from the life back home to the life in the U.S., that's not an easy transition. So I have literally no family members who came into the U.S., stayed in the U.S. for 6 months, left, went back to Afghanistan for another 6 months back home, just for them to figure out and get to the right mindset and come back, because they were in shock. They're like, what the hell is going on?
Well, I would say that you guys adjusted pretty well, just because knowing both of you, I know you guys are very successful in what you do. And I know you mentioned that when you had to work in sales and jewelry, that was your biggest shock coming here. But, that's not the case anymore. Tell us a little bit about what you do now, and tell us which skills of yours helped you get to what you're doing now.
Now I work for a professional services firm as a senior consultant. I work with regulations. It's regulatory and legal support. And we work on projects with states and also the federal government. What brought me to this position actually was the work that I did back home in Afghanistan. 2021 was a turning point year for me. I started thinking because I worked in the jewelry space for almost 8 years, or 8.5 years, I would say. But then it's a different industry. I started as a salesperson. Within the first year, I was promoted as a store manager, and then I was then promoted as a business operations manager. And for a second jewelry store, I started with them as a marketing director. So I was responsible for marketing efforts of 17 stores, their online, social media, data analysis, of course, their ROIs, and also we did a lot of data and ordering and their social media and online, also their website. But that wasn't what I always wanted to do. I really always had in the back of my head, I always had that the job that I did back home, the differences that it would make. And you always look for a corporate life. You always look for that life and work balance. You can't get that in the retail industry. When you work in retail industry, you don't have that balance, especially when it comes towards the end of the year. That's the busiest time of the year. And when you work in the retail industry, of course, you have to work business hours or mall hours. So I really wanted to get away from that. And that's when I stumbled upon a friend actually who works in Deloitte, and she was the one who actually referred me to the position, and I applied. I went through the process, and I actually packaged everything that I have, or everything that I have done. I did not actually know that I could combine my experiences from the U.S. with experiences that I have back home, and I could package them together. Because I always thought it might be irrelevant, but it actually was not. Because my work in the U.S. taught me customer service, taught me how to deal with customers. Back home, I used to deal with delegates. I used to with delegations, with authorities, with Afghan counterparts, or European or other counterparts. But in here, when you're customer facing, that's a totally different scenario, because especially U.S. customer-facing jobs, it's absolutely different. So that taught me a lot about my communication skills, about my people skills. I'm more of a people's person. I thrive when when I work in groups and I work with teams. So that's how I packaged everything.
What
And I presented to this firm, and that's how I got hired.
What advice would you give to other Afghans that are in your position that, you know, they worked in, desk jobs and office roles and corporate or government style jobs who have recently transitioned to life in the United States? What advice would you give them? Would you tell them to push for that same type of route here in America? Would you tell them to go straight away? Would you tell them to maybe take some different route to build the skills like you built your communication skills, maybe build some other skills so that they could package that together? What would your general advice be for them?
The way that I see life, the way that I actually tell people, sometimes I sound like a very old wise person that actually gives advice or those AI generated videos. When I tell friends, family, anybody I know, I always reference it to my experiences, things that I've done that actually worked for me, things that I've done that didn't work for me. Easiest way to understand that is that if you are going on a path and you stumble up on a ditch, you tell the person behind you, "Hey, I stumbled up on this ditch. I fell, or I almost fell. Just, I want you to be cautious. Don't do this because I have done it. I have seen it," right? That's how I look at life. I always tell them. I would have two advices for them. First is that if they would want to get into professional services, or they want to continue what they did back in Afghanistan, or they want to have a so-called a desk job, study something that's related to that so that you can leverage up on it. So here,
okay,
of course, study something that you can leverage up on that, and you can scale that talent and the experiences that you have and get better at what you do. Or if you are not getting into that, get a skill that can get you into entrepreneurship. You can build a business. U.S. is the opportunity. Omar John is a prime example that this is the land where you can actually eat. This is I would say the easiest land out of any country in the world that you can make a business in seconds. You just 3 clicks away from creating an LLC or a S corp or anything that you want to create. So easy. So if they're thinking and going business route, I would say find a niche or something that you're passionate about, or the skill that you have. Make yourself better in that skill and go for it. Those are the two advice I would have. I would not want them to just compromise on anything just because of the sake of it, because I did that. I was there. And I thought I would make a difference, and I would continue working in retail industry, but you are not getting anywhere if you're not the owner of that business. You have to always understand that because you're working for somebody. But if you're working for corporate, of course you have a better future. You have the benefits that comes along, and you have a great life and work balance. But if you don't want that, I would say get a better skill or the business niche that you have, and then start that business.
So what I take away from what you just said is, for newly arrived Afghans who've previously been professionals, get some type of certification that is going to count here, that people are going to look at and recognize. And then that you could leverage to continue to do a professional job here. And the other thing you said was, if you want to do business, right? And I think like you said, Omar John's a prime example, and we can segue and ask you, how did you end up becoming an entrepreneur? Tell us a little bit about how that ended up happening. What was your goal? What was your motive? Did you always want to start a business? When you moved here, was that your intention?
It wasn't absolutely intention to start a business here, but when I got here, I was always, prior coming here, I had an offer from FSI to be a cultural advisor in Washington, D.C. My first destination was Oklahoma. And my families convinced me to come to California. And when I landed in San Francisco, they asked me, "Sir, where do you want me to send your green card? You're in San Francisco, but your home address is in Oklahoma." Oklahoma City. I said, yeah, I changed it. Here's my new address. So I changed it. I come here. But I never thought that I would start a business in U.S. But when I was a little child, and I did a bachelor in business administration back home, so it's always intention to learn. But I was into so much in sales and marketing. And I've done it. Then later on, I said, I'm too tired to going back to back. It's a lot of cold calls in Afghanistan. Here, you got to make an appointment. There, you just knock the door. That's it, how you do it. 2017 was a turning point. I was laid off by Apple, Volt. Had to visit my mom. I come back, and everybody came in to visit me. A brother, a friend, just like you guys. He came to our house to just like a housewarming party. He said, Omar, I see potential in you. You have a good experience. Why don't you start a business? I said, dude, I don't know anything like that. He said, there's an opportunity with one of the large company. They're hiring. So how about if we do it? I said, if you are in, I'm in. Because you have the experience, first-hand experience. I have maybe the talent to put together a show, but I need a performer. That's how we start that one. I tell everybody that before I start that business, I used to sleep on San Francisco streets twice a week. I used to leaving the house on Friday, coming back home Sunday night. Where I was in the 72 hours, you have the answer. 18 hours non-stop work, 6 hours sleep, and I put, hey Siri, set the timer for 6 hours. Why? Because app was making you to say you're not allowed to do it.
Yes.
Otherwise, I would have driven for 24 hours. So dedication, yes. And going towards it, like what motivated, and have I ever thought about it? No, but looking around the U.S. life makes you to think out of the box. I was tired, working every day. At the end of the week, you make 900. I'm not used to live that way. Like if I don't make at the end of the month, then I have to think or use my pension money when I got it from home. Then I start thinking and thinking. That business idea came in. 2018, we decided to start a company. Primary Express, that was the first dream company. And we started from same like this table, and we discussed it and we started. It's not like every business is perfect. We failed at the beginning. We run a business, 26-foot truck. I was working like a hard labor, like slave labor.
Mm-hmm.
Waking up 4 a.m. in the morning, going back home 6 p.m. About 16,000 pounds a day lifting. Then slowly, then change another opportunity. Alhamdulillah, today we manage overall 5 businesses. And everything goes back at dedication. If you can dream it, then you can do it. But all you have to have a good intention. Like you can just, like we say in the Farsi, عزم اول میگه شرط اول کامیابی اراده مضبوط است. It means like if you want to do something, your intention.
That's beautiful.
The first thing.
Yeah.
And you have a good intention, then you can do that.
One more thing I want to add to that is that a lot of Afghans, we as Afghans, we are very hardworking people. We come from backgrounds that we have been through harsh conditions, we have been through a lot of tests and turbulences. One more thing that my suggestion would be to answer your earlier question. What my advice would be to surround yourself with like-minded people. That's very, very important. Unfortunately, in the Afghan community, a lot of times you would get the wrong guidance out of good faith. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is very important. You will get the wrong guidance out of very good faith. As بسیار دل پاک, you know? They will just... Why? Because that's what people know. If you are coming to this country and you're brand new and you are surrounding yourself with people and all they talk is how they can apply for housing, or how they can get their Section 8 approved, or how they could actually get more food stamps, or how they could get more cash aid, that's all you're going to get. That's all you're going to be thinking about, because your first instinct of you coming into the to US is that, okay, this is what all US is all about. Everybody goes through this, so I am going through this. This is my transition, because you don't know better. But if you start exploring, if you start talking, and if you start surrounding yourself with people that have actually been successful, and you use them as your role model just to get there, you will actually be more successful than you are with the relatives that you're relying on, because they, out of a very good faith, out of a very clean heart, they actually try to help you. But that actually, in the long run, it turns out to be something that actually draws you from becoming more successful.
I think the advice you just gave is very profound. I think a lot of that government aid becomes a barrier to a greater life in America. And I want to end on that note, because neither of you guys did that. And that is the reason why you guys are a prime example of Afghans living the American dream. And I want to thank you guys for coming on and sharing your story and inspiring all of us, to be honest. So thank you guys.
Thank you. I just want to end to one thing. Like, I know we are almost very close to the end of time. That don't think that every idea is a bad idea. It's just the timing. If you this country, like you said, you can make any and live and also upgrade your standards. The people you're surrounding with, these are not your standards. You ought to get to upgrade yourself, push yourself to the limit. Don't sit down for all this stuff, because they do it, and never show yourself overqualified. Just go, be prepared where you're going, just to go with the same level. Then slowly go up there.
I love that advice is coming from the entrepreneur, because you've been talking about dedication, ideas, and never giving up, and that's really what it's all about.
And I would say, I was sitting here, there were so many times I wanted to chime in, but I will just say it. I just enjoyed listening to you guys. There was amazing stories, and I know we could have gone for another 2 hours
easily
if we wanted to, but I just really enjoyed and learned a lot from you guys. Two different perspectives and a lot of commonalities. So thank you guys again for coming and talking, taking time out of your days. I know you guys are both very busy and you value your time, so I appreciate it a ton. I know Mansoor does as well.
Of course. And we hope to have you guys back on, inshallah.
Thank you, inshallah.
All right, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us at the Majlis Podcast. We would love your support, so please like, comment, share, and subscribe.